Hello and welcome to a Thunder Thursday Hangout on News OK Live. I'm Mike Sherman, sports editor of the Oklahoman, joined here by remote by our Thunder team, including Darnell Mayberry, our beat writer from a Starbucks somewhere in Chicago. From the newsroom of the Oklahoman, Jenni Carlson, and from his compound in Edmond, North Oklahoma City, John Rohde. This Thunder Hangout is sponsored by our friends at Advent Heat, Air, and Plumbing. Call them. They're on call for Thunder fans 24/7. Guys, the news of the day, which John Rohde broke on News OK a couple hours ago, is the Thunder uniforms, the new alternative uniforms. John, I thought you showed incredible restraint in your description of the uniforms. How would you describe them now?
Simple. And you know what? I don't know how you guys feel, but I love the Brooklyn Nets look. I love the simplicity of it. The old school. I know Darnell's 6 years old. He won't probably go for that look, but I liked it. And they look better in person, Jenni. I saw them in person, and I wasn't too impressed with the photo, but then I saw them in person. I go, hey, that's pretty sharp.
You know what? To me, I like the fact that they are so vastly different from the other uniforms. I like that, you know, if you saw them, you wouldn't necessarily automatically think of the uniforms that they usually wear. I think that having that different look is actually pretty cool. If it was just a replica of what they already have in a different color, I'm not sure it would have as much sizzle. I like something vastly different.
Jenni, I think you may be the only person on the staff, and I'm feel fairly confident in leaving Barry out of this too, who can talk about fashion items. But if there's a second place person, I'm going to give it to Darnell. Darnell, you're usually classing up the joint with your look. What do you think about the Thunder's new alternative look?
I just don't get the navy blue. That's the only thing that I question. I just don't understand where the navy blue comes from. I mean, they can make a claim that it's a part of the team colors. They got about 50 team colors in the team colors, so you know, of course, it's a part of the team colors. But I just don't understand the navy blue. And aside from that, I mean, it's okay. It's nothing, you know, it's nothing that I think people are going to love. But you know, it is what it is, and I give them credit for trying something different.
I think simplicity, John, when you said simple, I mean, it is that. We've also learned here, if we ever want to find out exactly what the new thing is going to be, we just need to consult a video game. Once again, a video game, in this case, what is it, NBA 2K, what, 2K12, broke the story. These uniforms were the ones that the NBA obviously submitted to the video game makers, and they didn't play well. What's the reaction you're seeing on Twitter? You're getting from readers. What's the reaction, John?
It's about 2/3 against, 1/3 in favor. But I think there'll be some long lines. Definitely be some long lines tomorrow. One guy said it's going to have to grow on me, and I think, heck, that's the way I felt when the Thunder named themselves, and the Thunder came up with the state colors as their team colors. And I'm going to talk to Sam Presti hopefully here in an hour or so and get his reasoning behind he went with the style that he did. But I think it'll grow on people, Sherm. But right now, it's about 2/3 against.
The comments on the bottom of your blog post on this kind of go with that, John, just reading from them. Ugly, looks like my small town elementary school uniform, 1988. I was going to say when I played for Savage, the YMCA team in Savage, we had the simple look too. The other, I mean, simple is right, but John, I think you made a great point, and I'll start with Jenni on this. This whole thing has grown on us. When they came in with the Thunder, even though it won a reader contest that we staged ourselves, the readers said they wanted Thunder, we just kind of went, well, good for that. There's no chance it'll be Thunder, and it was Thunder. Then they came out with these uniforms, these white ones with the block letters, and we said, what, Jenni? Ugh?
Not great. Didn't love the logo, didn't love the name, didn't love the colors. Yeah, but as this team has won, obviously those things have become synonymous with a franchise that's really on the upswing. So, you know, the idea of Thunder and Thunder Blue and the Shield logo and those sorts of things, suddenly it doesn't seem so bad when it's all connected with the team that won the Western Conference Finals last year. So, yeah, I mean, these may not be the most spicy of uniforms, but I kind of like it. I mean, it does kind of harken back to the junior high days when you were, you know, using the JV uniforms from whatever, the 60s or 70s. I kind of like that look.
Is there any chance that the NBA, Darnell, said something of this effect? Your team is already exciting, probably too exciting. In fact, there's some franchises in some major markets that have a little bit of a complex about how exciting you are. We got to tone it down, tame it down. Here's some bland uniforms. What do you think?
No chance. I mean, these things are designed by the NBA or by each individual team, and the NBA sort of butts out and lets the team decide what they want to do and how they want to do it. So, but I mean, are we surprised that this thing is simple? Everything that this franchise has unveiled has been simple. Everything, the name, Thunder, nobody really cared for that. The uniforms, nobody really cared for them when they first came out. The home and away uniforms, the logo, sort of simplistic. The Thunder Girls, their team name is the dance team, Thunder Girls. Everything this franchise has done has been sort of simplistic. So I'm not sure why everyone's surprised that these alternates don't have a lot of pizzazz.
Last word on uniforms, Darnell. Back to you real quick on this. I think the only reason why people might have been surprised are the expectations, and maybe we played a part of it. We saw those pretty simple uniforms that came out the first time, and we thought OKC would somehow be part of this. We looked what Phoenix did with the PHX, which is an acronym that really doesn't even, I mean, who uses that? Is that what the acronym is at the Phoenix airport? I mean, yes, well, I guess it is. But in OKC, we thought, hey, this adds up to something cool. They'll do something with OKC, but no. There's where the expectations come from, Darnell.
Yeah, OKC would have been cool on one of the uniforms, and who's to say that down the line this franchise won't unveil a couple more uniforms, an alternate, or at least
he froze up.
Alternate uniform. You never know. We could see a different alternate a few years later. And can you guys hear me?
We just heard that last part. Well, Darnell, I'll end the uniform part by saying, hey, Friday at 7 o'clock at the Chesapeake Energy Arena, the Thunder's going to have these uniforms on when they play the Detroit Pistons. Go to the Thunder Rumblings blog on News OK right now, and you can see all the other dates. And as John said, you can be pre-ordered online at 4 o'clock today on the Thunder Shop, NBAThundershop.com. Next topic, guys. They got some new uniforms. We got a new team. What do we think of the Thunder, the new Thunder so far? They're 2-2. What's your early review, Darnell Mayberry?
Give it some time. I think there's going to be an adjustment period that this team needs to go through, and because of the James Harden trade, obviously, but also just because it's a new season. No season is the same, and this team was going to have to go through some changes anyway coming into this season. Bringing Eric Maynard back and things like that. So I just think that you got to give it some time and let it play out.
John Rohde, you've written about the rotations. You've written about the second unit. What's your early take on the? We lost everybody. Here they all come back shortly. We're hanging out with our Thunder beat writers. We're hanging out in the News OK Thunder Thursday Hangout, sponsored by Advent Heat, Air, and Plumbing. They're on call for Thunder fans 24/7. And our technicians are on call 24/7. We'll get Rohde back here in a minute. Jenni, go with you. Your early take on the new Thunder.
Well, it's clearly a different looking team than we saw before. You lose some of that playmaking ability that you had when you added James Harden to the mix with Durant and Westbrook and that second unit as well. But Kevin Martin is a heck of a player. I mean, I think as Darnell or John, one of the two, wrote the day after the acquisition, this is a guy that has regularly really given the Thunder problems. And, I think that the reasons are many. He can shoot, he can drive, he's pretty darn efficient, he gets to the free throw line. He's just not been on really good teams, and that's something Darnell explored after we got a chance to talk to Kevin Martin. And I think if given time, I think he is going to integrate well into the system, but he's not going to be James Harden. I mean, unless you're going to go out and get Manu Ginobili, and last I checked, the Spurs weren't interested in trading him, you're probably not going to find another player like James Harden. Those two guys he and Ginobili are kind of unique, and there's really not a lot of other guys like him. So I think give it time and see how these guys come together. I think it's going to be a good product in the end.
Darnell, I'll toss you a question from the readers on our News OK Live page. Is Kevin Martin likely to be in Oklahoma City the entire season? You threw this out there as a possibility, albeit not the prime possibility, but 2 first-round draft picks, both lottery slotted or potentially lottery slotted picks, and an expiring deal with Kevin Martin. What's the chances that he would be moved at the trade deadline?
I can't see it right now, especially if he continues to play as well as he's played through the first 4 games. He brings something to this team that it sorely needs, and that's perimeter shooting, a threat who can work without the ball in his hands. So I think he's a good fit for this team going forward, at least for the rest of this season. And I'd be shocked if he's traded at the deadline just because he's such a good fit, and he's willing to sacrifice and do whatever it takes to fit in and win.
Along those lines, Darnell, Jenni alluded to this, as sort of the new Thunder recipe. We knew what it would look like for 3 years. We saw the way James Harden emerged off the bench as a playmaker, but now he's not we don't see that ingredient coming off the bench anymore. What are some of the new ingredients you see the Thunder stirring in with this new lineup, and who is doing the playmaking now?
Well, Eric Maynard, as I mentioned earlier, he's back now, and I think we're going to start to see more and more of Eric Maynard try to orchestrate the offense. I think through the first 4 games, Eric Maynard has really tried to sacrifice his own offense by getting Kevin Martin involved, and I think over time you're going to see Eric Maynard start to become a little bit more aggressive. And you're also seeing Scott Brooks toy with a lot of different things in that second unit, playing Eric Maynard and Russell Westbrook together, going with Perry Jones at times, and really Hasheem Thabeet is integrating into that second unit. So there's a lot of different things right now that are going on. I think everyone has a lot to figure out, Scott Brooks and the players and how they fit together.
John, in this figure-out stage that the Thunder is in, it's natural. Why are there so few minutes for PJ3 and Lamb? That's a question from a reader.
Well, they're just rookies, and they're joining a really good team at that. I think there'd be few minutes even if Harden had stayed around, probably be even fewer minutes. Because when PJ is in there, Darnell, he looks like he just wants to blend in more than create and do something on his own. I don't think that's a bad thing. But and Jeremy Lamb, as you wrote the other day, you watch him shoot more shots missed than make. But he's got some skill, too. They're just young on a good team. That's not a good combination if you're looking for minutes.
Jenni, this is the kind of talent that the Thunder had when they started 3-29. We saw there was all the minutes galore for these kind of players back then. Not so many now. Which of those two, if you had to pick one, PJ3 or Jeremy Lamb, could you see carving out a role in the rotation this year?
Well, I'd probably go with Perry Jones. I mean, I think he's a little more time in the system. Obviously, has to help. I think anytime you're talking about throwing a rookie onto a team right before the season starts, I mean, that's tough. I mean, here's a guy that he's been in Houston 5 minutes and he's already been uprooted and traded. I mean, that's tough. It's basketball and it's always basketball, but you got to think there's a higher learning curve right now for Jeremy Lamb. I do think it's only a matter of time before we see more of Perry Jones. We're often reminded of the 2 minutes or whatever Serge Ibaka got in his first game. I think it was 2 minutes, and how it went from 2 minutes to 3 minutes to 5 and on and on and on until he became a starter. But he took advantage of those minutes in that first game. He had that opportunity. Perry Jones has got to do the same when his number gets called, and even if it's a blowout type of game, he's got to come in. He's got to make an impact. He's got to do good things, and I think that's going to happen. I think he's got a chance just because that learning curve is higher for Jeremy Lamb. I think PJ3's got a chance, more immediate, to carve out that niche and maybe get some playing time with this team.
You're watching Thunder Thursday on News OK Live, and we're hanging out with our Thunder beat writers and columnists. We got Darnell Mayberry up in Chicago, John Rohde from his home in Edmond, and Jenni Carlson from the newsroom. Guys, 2 more questions. Let's first talk about the thing that has been the story of the season so far, the thing maybe the Thunder would like to turn the page on, and that is the James Harden trade. John, the big issue seems to be the 1 hour that James Harden says he was given. There seems to be some hurt feelings about that. You blogged on this topic. James talked about this topic, yet the Thunder's been sort of silent about it. It's what were the dynamics? Why 1 hour?
Well, I mean, everything, Sherm, comes down to 1 hour eventually. I mean, if it had been October 31st, there only would have been 1 hour to decide eventually. I don't know when the $54 million deal was offered, if that was a final deal. It could have been offered the day before. It could have been offered the week before. I seriously doubt it was offered at 9 a.m. and he had till 10 a.m. to pull the trigger. They had been going back and forth, talking for 16 weeks. I'm sure that number entered James Harden's mind at some point, I would hope. I think it snuck up on. I don't think he thought Sam Presti would bump the deadline up 3 days and pull the trigger. I thought if he waited it out till the end, he could get the figure he wanted, Darnell. And I don't know if that's how it's happened, but maybe it snuck up on James Harden a little bit.
Darnell, James Harden got off to such a great start. He was the story of the NBA through 2 games. The third game was a little less explosive, and then last night happened. What's your take on James Harden, and will Thunder fans be sitting here all season watching his line score?
I don't think they're going to have to sit there all season and watch the box scores of the Houston Rockets, because I don't think he's going to be able to keep it up. I mean, we've already seen in the last 2 games, he had 24 points on 24 shots, and then last night against Denver, 15 points on, I think it was 15 shots. So he's going to struggle at times this season, and I think he's going to have more bad days than good, unfortunately for him individually. But that's going to make it easier for Thunder fans to sort of move on and say, okay, he's not tearing it up like he was in those first 2 games. And, it's going to be a struggle for the Houston Rockets. They had a great first 2 games, but, that's not a playoff team, and they're going to have their bumps in the road this season. So I don't think the Thunder fans are going to have to pay much attention going forward to what James Harden and the Houston Rockets are doing.
And later this month, Jenni, the Beard returns to Oklahoma City. I believe the date is November 28th. At the end of No Shave November, are we going to see the tribute beards? What will it be like that night at the Chesapeake Energy Arena?
I think that's a good question. We've generally seen, applause for guys that have a connection, whether it's been Chris Paul or Blake Griffin. But this is a different kind of thing. This is a guy that, played here, that has a lot of fans here, that has a lot of connection here to the fan base. This is the first time this sort of thing has really happened. Jeff Green obviously got traded, but, wasn't quite like this. He wasn't here as long. There wasn't quite the success level at that point. So it's a different level that fans are going to feel. I think in sort of typical Thunder fan fashion, you'll see people applaud for him when he's introduced, but there'll probably also be some boos. I think there's some people that feel like he got greedy, and so I think you'll see a combination of those 2 things when he's introduced, but I have no doubt once the game starts that there's not going to be any cheering for James Harden.
That stuff wore off pretty quick with CP3 and the Hornets. Blake Griffin was booed, so James Harden, be forewarned. Darnell, let's end it up with you. We'll talk about the upcoming schedule, which doesn't appear to be all that tough. Of course, it started with the Atlanta Hawks, which looked like them playing without Josh Smith, a sure W. It wasn't sure. The Raptors, they took out the wrath on the Raptors and beat them sort of as badly as they should have beaten the Hawks and the Raptors. Tonight in Chicago, we're going to see the Chicago Bulls without Derrick Rose. And then come the Pistons, then the Cavs, then the Pistons again. There's 4 games that look very winnable. Is that a 4-0 stretch for the Thunder, Darnell?
Well, I think if they run into any problems, it'll be tonight against the Bulls. This is one of the best defensive teams in the league, even without Derrick Rose, who wasn't much of a factor on that defensive end anyway, and most people who have a problem with him winning MVP 2 years ago will tell you that. So I just feel like those other Eastern Conference teams, there should be gimmies for the Thunder, and I don't see any trouble with those teams. If the Thunder comes out and does what they need to do on the defensive end and playing with energy like they did against the Raptors and moving the ball continuously like they did against the Raptors Tuesday night, they'll be in good shape.
John, this schedule looks like it was made to order for a new Thunder team, mixing in some new ingredients. What trouble spot beyond Chicago do you see in that little stretch, if any?
Well, I'm just curious. Both LA teams now. I think a little bit less of that than I did a week ago. Lakers are struggling. Nash is hurt. Clippers are struggling more than I thought they would. The fans need to get their arms around an opponent here. They haven't had really any big draws coming in so far. It's selling out. But Wednesday, Memphis comes to town. They never like them much, so that'll be good. Get the juices flowing a little bit. But Sherman, 16 of the first 24 at home. To me, they got to win a minimum of 14 of those. No exaggeration. That gives them one more home loss till December. So they better take care of this home court because come January, they'll be gone a while.
John, what was the record you wrote about this stretch, the start of the season a couple weeks ago? What was the record you saw for them?
Well, I thought 20-4 was pretty optimistic, but not unreasonable. If you took care of every home game and you split on the road, that was 20-4. They're going to have to hustle, but that was before the Harden trade when I wrote that and everything. But still, I'm thinking they got to get off to a good start, or they're just going to make it harder on themselves.
Jenni, are we forgetting that this is still, by and large, as Pat Jones would say, a young team, and they're going to have Hawks games, is what they're going to do.
Well, and they had them last year too. I mean, let's not forget that they had those games last year that felt like, sort of a what was that moment when you just felt like it was completely out of kilter with how they had been playing, and then when you look back, it was completely out of kilter with how they played after that game. So yeah, they're going to throw some clunkers out there because I think that they are still maturing and growing and figuring out how to play at that high level every night. They're now in a season where they're the defending Western Conference champions and the target that comes with that. And obviously they're in an adjustment period right now, but that doesn't change the fact that teams are going to be gearing up to play them like they gear up to play the Lakers and the Spurs and those sorts of things. And that's a whole different ballgame when you've got, a team like the Hawks or whomever, coming in and saying, all right, we want to make a statement and we're going to try to do it against you. And that's a whole different level of play that they may not be accustomed to just yet. They'll get there, but we may see those clunkers every once in a while.
The Thunder tonight, 7 o'clock on TNT from Chicago. Darnell Mayberry will be there. On Friday night, return to the Chesapeake Energy Arena for a 7 o'clock game with the Detroit Pistons. And then Sunday, that early start, 6 o'clock against Byron Scott, our old friend Byron Scott and the Cleveland Cavaliers. That's all for this edition of the Thunder Thursday News OK Live Hangout. I'd like to thank our friends at Advent Heat, Air, and Plumbing. Call them today for your heater tune-up before it gets too cold. Thanks, guys.